Now remember, this is a double stitched seam. It's actually stitched 3 times, but it's stitched straight twice and then we zigzag. So in order to do our second line of stitching, we're going to line it up so that the outside edge of your foot is right along the edge of the fabric. Again, we want to start a little bit in from the edge, hold on to your threads, do a couple stitches forward. You should always back stitch at the beginning and at the end of the seams. And then we're going to, again, this is where I'm watching. And if I'm going faster than you want to go, you need to slow down. Remember, nobody in here, not even me, sews past the 2. And don't go faster than you're comfortable because we don't want anybody to get hurt. So I went to the end, I back stitched, I hit the needle up button, I lift the presser foot up, and then I'm going to clip those threads. Don't give me samples that have loose threads on them because that's not what you're supposed to do. Alrighty, so we have our 2 lines of stitching. And we're only going to do this kind of stitching on the center front seam and on the center back seam. And that's because they need a little more strength. That's where they are going to, where the stress is going to be. Not so much on the side seams, basically front and back seam. So now I'm going to zigzag and I'm going to turn it to stitch 5, which is our zigzag. Don't use 4. Don't use 6. They are totally different kinds of things. You need to use stitch number 5. We're going to go back to the beginning, and this time we are going to line it back up with the 5/8 of an inch. So the first time was at the blue tape, which is 5/8. The second time was the edge of the presser foot, and the third time for the zigzagging, we're going to go back to the blue tape. And what this is going to do is it's going to zigzag over the top of this line of stitching, not this line of stitching. This line of stitching, the one that's closest to our outside edge. Now, in most situations, you're not going to have to backstitch whenever you are zigzagging. And on this particular project, I don't think we have to backstitch at all, simply because it gets covered up by something else. So hold on to your threads when you get started so you don't get a thread blob. And we're just going to stitch right along that 5/8 of an inch mark over here, and if you notice, it's stitching on top of our previous line of stitching. Stitch off the end. Remember, needle up, presser foot up, pull off to the left, and clip those threads. Okay, and so your sample should look like this. There should be a line that is 5/8 of an inch from the edge. There should be a line, a straight line that is about 1/2 of an inch from the edge, and then the zigzagging should be right on top of that second line of stitching. When we do our seams in our project, we're going to go back in and trim with our scissors along the zigzagging. We're not going to do that on our sample because I want to make sure that you have this distance correct. And once you trim it off, I'm not going to know whether you did it right or not. So this is what your sample looks like. You need to make sure that I see this and take note of it. I have to really look at it before you can go on to your project. Because if you don't understand how to do this, this is going to be a really difficult thing for your project. One of the first things that you have to do is put the center back together, and you need this seam in order to do that. So make sure you do this first before you move on to the next step.